Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another divisional preview. Today, we are talking about the AFC South. What was once considered the redhead stepchild of the AFC now might be a future powerhouse with a lot of teams in the up and coming, a possible Super Bowl contender, a possible team with a star quarterback, but just uncertain of, and the Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence and just a questionable coaching staff surrounding him. And you got the Titans too. And we have a lot to talk about here, so let's get started. Tony, do you want to say anything to everyone?
I love that Tennessee is an afterthought in your mindset.
We've already argued about the Titans this year, so be prepared to hear us argue. Titans fans, you're going to love him. Titans fans, you're going to hate me. Uh, but we got to start off. The Titans did finish last, so that's the team we're going to start talking about. And the biggest weakness I view for the Titans, and it's not really their overall their defensive line, but that Titans secondary and linebacking crew, I know like.
Um, you know, I think that they've done a little bit. I like Kenneth Murray that they brought in this year. So and I mean they brought in Chidobe Awuzie. I think that their defense last year was just different. And if you go back and you look at what Mike McDaniel and that style of coaching has done for maybe you don't have the best players, but just because of how they play together, they're able to play faster and that make more of an impact. And so, in my opinion, I think their defense is going to be better. And one thing that you'll remember is it's pretty much all predicated upon the line, the defensive line. And I don't know if we're going to have if you're going to find a better defensive line in the AFC other than what you're dealing with in Tennessee this year.
They got one player. I like the one player, but no, they do not have the best defensive line in the AFC.
So they have one player, but they brought in Sebastian Joseph Day from San Francisco. He's good at what he's going to be needed to do, which is, run defense. They drafted Tavondre Sweat, and I think that he's going to help him out a lot. So I think their defensive line is going to be better than you're giving them credit for.
You're taking their defensive line over the Raiders' defensive line.
Uh well, I'm not talking about edges. I'm just talking about interior defensive line. I'm talking about defensive tackles. So yes, I will.
He plays on the line. Crosby does not line up as a typical edge. He plays as a DN mostly.
I'm talking interior defensive. Am I going to say that they have anybody to compare to Crosby? No, because Crosby is always in line for defensive player of the year, right? I mean, he does it all. He is an absolute beast. But the Raiders just brought in Wilkins this year, and we'll talk about that when we get to the AFC West. But I will put up Tennessee's defensive interior over them. And last year, did the Ravens have any like superstar defensive end / outside linebacker for rushing? No. They played super solid on the outside, and their interior defensive line created so much havoc because nobody knew where they were coming from that they were able to create mismatches.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of this team overall. We're gonna talk about more. There's some positives. Do I think running the Ravens system can work? Yes, but it's not the guy who ran it last year. We can all point out he comes from the system. Da 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 da. Unless you're the guy that was calling the plays, we don't know for certain if you're going to run it as good. In theory, it can, but in practice, man. And one thing the Ravens do have is they have a very good secondary that they were able to transition with it. The Titans have L'Jarius Sneed. That's it, really. So they don't have a good safety work, which Baltimore does. Baltimore typically, even though they don't look great on paper, they have two cornerbacks that can line up all the time. Tennessee does not have that.
So you're mentioning Baltimore had great safety play, right? Baltimore's two safeties prior to when McDaniel came and implemented the system were nothing. Stone was a seventh round pick that didn't do anything, and there was talk that your first round draft that everybody thinks is a darling right now was going to be a first round bust, right? So it was because of how the defense was played together. So when you say that Tennessee doesn't have a secondary, I'll come back with neither did Baltimore until they started putting their pieces together and letting them play together.
See, but the talent was there in Baltimore already. I don't see the talent in Tennessee. Gavin Stone should not have been a seventh round pick. That still boggles my mind to the day. And it's not like he did nothing before McDonald got there. He was a good nickel corner who played there, and they moved him to safety more full time. They had him come up play the run before McDonald got there. He did that very well. Gavin Stone, considered just a seventh round pick, I think is wrong. Because I don't think he had that value. He was already a good player. He just became better when McDonald got there.
Well, you're meaning Geno Stone, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so let's look at that. In 2021, he had 12 tackles, 1 interception. In 2022, he had 32 tackles, no interceptions. In 2023, he had 7 interceptions and 44 tackles. Okay? So, no, he wasn't a very good player until Mike McDaniel got there.
Okay, first of all, I got confused with the baseball player for the Dodgers because I watched him this weekend. So that's on me.
So is that who Gavin Stone is? I don't know.
Yes, Gavin Stone's a pitcher for the Dodgers. I watched him like Saturday night, I think, or something, and he
that's awesome.
And that got caught in my head. Yeah. I think Geno Stone has always been good. I think he was good in Baltimore. He was coming off a knee injury after his rookie year. Didn't have the best sophomore year. Started to see him come more to form. He only started 7 games in 2022, and then he finally came in form 2023. But that's more to talk about because he is someone to talk about in the AFC North because he's not a Raven anymore. And but I look at this Titans team, and I don't want to go off on a Ravens tangent, but they lost their franchise player. They don't have their identity. They did bring in some pieces for the line, which we'll talk about in a second. But outside of Jeffrey Simmons and L'Jarius Sneed, no one on this defense really gets me excited and tells me, hey, they can be good. I think they're going to be bad. I don't think they have a good opposite corner for L'Jarius Sneed. I don't think they have good safety play at all. In that linebacking room, Kenneth Murray, I loved coming out of the draft. I did not think he was good at all with the Chargers. I was confused of how much they paid him with the Titans because I thought he would maybe get your first round pick. Here's a try deal to see if you'll work out. They paid him more money than I thought he would get. And I just look at all this. It's so experimental that I just don't feel like it's going to work. To me, the Titans feel a whole lot like Colorado football did last year, where they were tried out this transfer portal thing. They brought in all these pieces, and you could tell they weren't going to work, but man, were they hyped up, and it just failed. To me, the Titans brought in a lot of pieces, but man, they do not look like they're NFL starters. And just why I think it's not going to work.
Well, I guess time will tell. I'm definitely more bullish on them. And just we'll pick out Kenneth Murray here really quick. You're mentioning that you don't think he played well with the Chargers. What defensive player played well with the Chargers because of how screwed up their system was?
Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack.
I'd say Mack. I wouldn't even say Bosa. I'd say Mack.
Bosa, you never know because he always has injury issues.
Yeah. But, I mean, other than Mack, who was playing like, he's probably a second-year player, I don't think that anybody really was put to their best advantage in the best position, But I mean, Kenneth Murray had, 3 sacks last year, 79 tackles. So I'd say that's pretty good. Considering he wasn't meant to be, continually resting the passer. So I just don't think that anybody in that defense was very good. And I'm highly optimistic about what he's going to be able to do with the way that defensive scheme plays their linebackers. And I am super bullish on Cedric Gray as well. I really like him. He's going to be able to provide that thump that I think that they need.
Oh, I think Gray will be the starting inside linebacker by season end. I was a fan of him coming out. I do think he is a little raw, though, because he played at Colorado State. It's not the best developmental program right now. They brought in some good coaches to work on that. But you can tell there's still stuff he has to work on. And, hey, he's going to a spot. He's going to get a lot of reps to work on it.
Let's kick over to their offense so we don't just spend this whole pod talking about defense and how you and I completely disagree about everything. And just so we're clear, I'm usually right on defense and you're not. So, there.
I think the biggest thing to talk about is the addition of the Callahans to the Titans on offense. And
I'd say that's pretty integral. You're right.
Bo and Bill Callahan. Wait, is it Bo?
It's Brian.
Oh my God.
Are you going draft day?
I guess so. For some I have it literally written in my notes. Bo and Bill Callahan.
So just so everybody knows, Jordan has been up for, less than an hour.
Yes, literally less than an hour. But these notes were taken on full rest, and I just had them written down as Bo Callahan. Brian Callahan comes from the Cincinnati Bengals. He had a very good offense with them, helped work with Joe Burrow, develop him. I'm sure that's a big reason why he was hired to work with Will Levis. But I don't know if the play style is the same between Levis and Burrow. How do you think Callahan is going to adjust to working with a young, very raw player compared to what he got in Cincinnati and Joe Burrow?
Well, I think that's definitely something that you want to make note of is the fact that Burrow's development when he, was drafted is different than Levis's development, right? They came from completely different programs and different levels of programs. So first and foremost, I think you're absolutely right there. One of the things that I will say, though, and that's one of the reasons why I think that this is the perfect fit for Levis initially, is that one of Tennessee's weaknesses last year was their offensive line, right? And one of Cincinnati's weaknesses since Burrow has been there is offensive line. And yet they've been able to create play calls and offensive schemes surrounding that. I like the pieces that Tennessee is bringing in on the offensive line. And in my recollection, Callahan is in the top 5 for offensive line coaches since I've been watching football. And so I think that if you put that with the play calling of, should I just say B just so, I don't so I don't confuse you, but I think that's going to be a pretty darn good marriage. Do they have Derrick Henry anymore? No. And you're absolutely right. He was their offensive identity for the last 6-7 years. But as you always put, for the last 3 years, you have been saying he's getting older. He's got a lot of, and every year he's been coming out and basically putting a sock in your mouth and telling you to shut up.
I don't get how a guy who plays as physical as he has aged better than most running backs who don't. I don't get it.
And I think that's just because in your generation, you didn't see the running backs that I saw that touched the ball 25 plus times in a game and were there game in and game out. They didn't come off the field. And so I just think he's a throwback. And what a throwback, right? But they brought in Tony Pollard, and is Tony Pollard going to be, a huge asset between the numbers? No, but he is going to give Levis another tool to throw on the outside to those quick outs so that they don't take the ill-advised sacks. They brought in Calvin Ridley, and I'm assuming that they're going to call him the one. Personally, I think they have 3 twos right now. So Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, and your guy. I just think that
Hopkins.
Yes, I think that they have 3 really, really good receivers that can beat anybody one-on-one, or most players, most DBs one-on-one, right? But I don't think any of them are legit superstars anymore. Hopkins was, but now he's not. And I love Tyler Boyd, and I think Calvin Ridley is a really, really good player, but I don't deem him the superstar that people want to anoint him.
So I will disagree on saying they have 3 twos. I think they have 2 twos and 1 clear third option, Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd, at one point he was hyped up very highly, but as Cincinnati just got more and more weapons, he kind of just got pushed down, and when one of those weapons were hurt or just not performing, they went to him, and he clearly didn't produce like a 2. He is a 3 now at this stage of his career. At one point, he was a very good 2, but he's just a 3 now. It happens with age. And second, so when I was looking
He's not that old.
Isn't he like 28, 29? Bill Callahan, I did not know he was a former Nebraska football coach when I looked him up, and I was like trying to go through all the teams he coached for to figure out, okay, where did his trajectory go and all that, and I saw Nebraska football head coach, and I was shocked personally because it was when I was a little kid, I fully didn't know what was happening, but Nebraska head football coach left there for the Jets to be their O-line coach from 2008 to 2011. Dallas Cowboys O-line coach from 2012 to 2014. Washington football team offensive line coach from 17 to 19. Then he was also the interim head coach for a bit. The Browns O-line coach for the past 3 seasons, now the Titans. The one thing you can notice when you look at his O-lines is typically the first year, they don't hit all cylinders in the first half of the season. So if Titans fans are expecting to have an elite O-line the first half of the season, you're probably not. You're just not gonna. I wouldn't expect it, especially with all the young players you have. That being said, as the teams continue and all that, their O-lines get better and better. They hold up longer. They clear out more running lanes. It just feels like this might be a year away for the Titans O-line because they have so much talent. Even though I wasn't the biggest fan of their first-round pick, he'll work with Callahan. Skoronski is a phenomenal talent. And they have a bunch of other pieces that are like, well, you're there until they get better ones for right now.
One thing that you're right on the Callahan thing, but what I'll say, kind of, he didn't have the players that he's walking into here. I feel more confident in the players that he's going to have here.
Actually, most of the time, and I think he's done this purposely, when he goes somewhere, they have multiple first-round picks in their line typically. He is a very smart man with picking teams to coach.
Well, there's nothing wrong with being smart.
No, I just figured it'd be a shout because he went to the Jets with DeBrickashaw Ferguson, who is a great tackle, probably a future Hall of Famer if he's not in already. I can't remember. The Dallas Cowboys, that's right around when they were drafting Tyrone Smith, Travis Fredericks, Zach Martin. They were bringing all those guys, and he was working with them. The Washington football team, they had Trent Williams, and they just drafted Brandon Sheriff. The Browns, they just drafted Jedrick Wills, and they brought in the guy from Tennessee, Jack Conklin. Like, they have brought in talent, high-level talent. So I wouldn't say he hasn't had this high-level talent before, because he has it almost every spot.
Well, particularly with Washington, and this is one of the things that I looked at when he hit Washington. That was the time when Trent was not doing well, like physically. So that's kind of what I'm referring to and so he was putting together teams that weren't 100%, right? because we all know that Trent is, whereas he is the best tackle in the game as far as I'm concerned. You know, there was a while where, I mean, he was struggling with so many health problems that you're right, they do have talent, but there's always a hiccup where he's coming in and there's really no hiccups here to start with. So, and the also, like I said, your play caller has been calling plays to help porous offensive lines for the last three plus years.
How much of that though is also having a quarterback that can see it. We're yet to see if Levis can see it. We know Burrow can sees it, and he probably holds the ball too long for some people. But does Levis see it? Does he understand NFL defenses yet to the point that he can realize when pressures are coming from what side to help call it out like a QB is supposed to?
Oh no, you're 100%. You're 100% accurate. But I think that's one of the reasons why, like I said, I mean, you think about it, they are going to have a quick passing game. They're still going to take their shots, but Pollard, Boyd, I'm blanking on their tight end.
Well, I actually don't know either.
Anyway, they're going to have a lot of quick hit in the game.
Yeah, this team, it feels like there's so many pieces missing for me personally. Chidozie Okonwu. Chikakonku.
Okay, yes.
Yep. Now, just real quick, we have to run through their draft because it feels a little wrong. We talked about a couple of their players already. J.C. Latham was their first pick. I wasn't the biggest fan of. I felt like he would be a guard at the NFL level. They were going to put him at left tackle, I believe I saw.
Yeah, I think so.
We talked about Sweat already. Cedric Gray, we've talked about. Brownlee Jr., I'm going to be honest, I didn't watch much of him. Jackson from Tulane, did not watch much. I do want to spend a quick little thing on Williams from Miami. And I personally wasn't like pounding the table from the draft year. I don't even know if you watched him. But the thing with him is he was so highly regarded before the 2023 season that falling in the 7th round is I can't blame you for drafting him type move. It makes sense. He has some talent. It just didn't click in Miami. Maybe you bring him in. Maybe he's the 7th round safety like Geno Stone that pops for you. And you got Harrell from Michigan bolstering their D-line trenches. Michigan was very good at that last year. You still need to be good at that in the NFL level. So overall, can't say it was a great draft for me personally, but it's a solid draft, and I see where they're moving. But now it's time to move on to the Indianapolis Colts. And as much fun as this team can be, I think the biggest question mark is we don't know about Anthony Richardson yet. I know a lot of people are hyping up. I'm a big AR fan. I'm a Florida Gator fan. I would love for him to be amazing. But I have concerns about him staying healthy. And I just have concerns about him. He hasn't played much football, and he's still extremely raw.
Inexperienced, right? I'm stealing a terminology from, I don't know if raw is the play, but he's inexperienced, and they are two different things. I wasn't a huge fan of his draft position in the draft because I feel all too often teams get themselves in big trouble. They bring in quarterbacks, brand new quarterbacks. They bring in coaches, and the coach is supposed to fix the team with a brand new quarterback and make everything work. I thought that when he was playing, he was explosive. Do we know what year 2 is going to be like for him? No, because part of the problem is he never got to play anybody that second time, right? And so we don't know what adjustments the other teams will make. They were just getting him his first time. So I think this year is going to be an interesting year for him, but you're right. His play style does not does not lead to sustained health. So it'll be interesting to see what they actually do to help keep him healthy.
Yeah, I'm a giant AR fan, but it's hard to not notice that he injured himself dancing after a Georgia game. It's not a joke. He literally did. He was out for the season. He then, week 2 in his last year at Florida against Kentucky, he suffered a knee injury. His knee got rolled up on. Clearly wasn't the same for the rest of the season. He played on it, but he struggled. I felt like it affected him a lot. And then last year, we saw him with a shoulder injury that knocked him out for the entire season. I love AR. I cannot stress this enough. I talk about him nonstop, don't I?
Yes, you do.
I want him to work, but I'm just terrified that you look at his injuries, you look at his play style, it's not gonna work. And that terrifies me because I think this Colts team is loaded up. They could go on a run. But that's where I want to talk about the other thing is if AR does go down, they did bring in an established NFL player, an NFL vet, who performed very well at the end of last year. Not in the playoff game, but overall was very good in Joe Flacco. Does bring in Joe Flacco give you some more faith that if AR goes down, they have a reliable guy to take snaps?
Well, I think Flacco proved a couple of things last year. One, he can still throw the ball. Two, he still throws the ball to the other team. Uh,
Well,
so um, is it an upgrade over the Minshew factor? I don't know if it is or isn't, to be quite honest. Um, I'd say that they definitely brought in some other pieces to help out, but I don't know where they're at, different to on the offensive side as maybe the fact that they brought in a Donnie Mitchell, but I think I think that Minshew loss is going to hurt a lot more than we think.
yeah. And I think one of the things is I noticed with the Colts offseason, maybe you disagree, they strengthened their depth as a team overall. I feel like they had more depth to the receiving room, more depth to defense. I feel like it was a very depth-heavy offseason. Would you disagree?
Well, I think they definitely helped out on their defense, right? They brought in, I mean, they brought in a lot of defensive help, and I think that will definitely help out. And I think that was mainly the focus of their off season was to strengthen their defense. Let's face it, their tackles that they drafted last year are only going to get better. So, but they did add depth there as well. You're right. I think this was a big time depth draft. I'm just not real confident in the backup quarterback with how their starter plays.
And that's very fine, and that'll be time to tell. There's not. I don't want to sound mean to Colts fans, but there's not a lot to talk about because the Colts are the exact same thing every year. They're loaded up. They have a lot of pieces, but they're highly volatile. How
I,
long?
I'd,
How long have we been saying that about them?
well, the one thing I'll say though is this is like the first year where they haven't really gone out and tried to win the off season. Usually they're making bigger moves than what they did this year. So I don't know. I feel that that they are definitely placed in a position to be strong this year, except at the quarterback position if there's an injury.
And that's just the biggest thing with the Colts is we can talk about. We love Pittman. I love A.D. Mitchell. I believe we both love Alec Pierce. Jonathan Taylor, what's not to love? Their old line, it's young, it's improving. Their defense, they have so much talent, but in the NFL, if you do not have the quarterback right, or if your quarterback gets injured, you're not going to have a good year. Last year was a miracle when you look at it. You have your top 5 pick get hurt. You're a young team. You have Gardner Minshew, who has not been a starter since Jaguar season, where they went, what was it, 1 win, 2 wins? It was not good. And it's a minor miracle when you look at that on paper, that they were so close to win the division.
Yeah, they have a lot of pieces, and they still have a lot of pieces. So this is just gonna, how far will your starting quarterback take you? And that's what that's what the season's gonna be about this year for them.
Okay, well, now it's time to move on to their draft. And I think I hyped up their first pick a lot when we were in the draft cycle. Laiatu Latu. I loved him. I thought he was the best defensive player in this class. I thought he was maybe one of the smartest players in this class. When I watched him play, I always felt like he knew what the quarterback was thinking, and he was there, and he improved as the game went on. He's maybe not going to come out and have the best first quarter, but the second, third, and fourth are all going to be better, all going to improve upon themselves because he learns tendencies. He picks them up. When he plays divisional teams twice in a year, I am so fascinated to see how he adjusts and how he does it from game to game on those. I cannot talk enough positives about Latu. I think he's the edge Indianapolis has needed for a long time, and I think it's just going to be great for them.
I would agree that he is definitely what they needed. So it will be interesting to see how well he does at this level. But he was the best edge, in my opinion, in this class as well.
Now we look at their second round pick. I loved A.D. Mitchell too. Are there questions there? Yes. From what I've seen is he is getting a better control on his diabetes, which was some of the issues I think teams had with him. With his attitude, is his blood sugar would go low, and he would just not have a good day. And I'm not diabetic. I can't speak for how it affects you personally. I'm just glad he's getting it under control. But the talent is there. He's a big contested catch body. What do you have when you have a highly inaccurate quarterback who can throw a lot of 50-50 balls? Big, highly contested catch. It's what you want.
I don't know if that's their style of offense, though. That'll be interesting to see. I think that you'll do more along the lines of him catching and running. I think it'll be the short games, and then catch, run, yards after catch being important. I'm not sure that they're going to be doing a lot of deep balls to him. I mean, they've got Pierce for that. I don't think that that's going to be his niche.
I don't know if their plan's going to be to start out the season using him like that, but by the end of the season, I think he's going to be their clear-cut 2 receiver. Now, as we look at the third round pick, and I am terrified I'm going to mispronounce his name, Matt Goncalves.
That's how I would have pronounced it.
I apologize to him and his family if I butchered it, but what do you think of the tackle out of Pitt?
Pitt's pretty solid on the offensive and defensive line all the time, right? So, I mean, is he going to be a star? It's too early to tell. I think it was another depth piece. I really do.
Then we look at Tanor Bortolini. I'm Italian too. That's pathetic by me. I really liked him coming out. I thought he was a very good guard for Wisconsin last year. I thought he would go higher than the 5th round. I thought he was a late end day 2 pick. Getting him in the 5th round is just good value.
Yeah. Once again, you don't know how much longer your center is going to be playing. So get a guy that can work under him for a year or so and go from there. Yeah, I mean that's good. That's good sense.
Another depth piece, and maybe a special teams piece, Anthony Gould from Oregon State. I watched a lot of Oregon State games last year for whatever reason. I always noticed him. I always thought he was very good when the ball got in his hands. I think he is a good 5th-round pick.
He's going to be depth in special teams. I don't honestly think that he's going to be um, game day, shocking everybody.
You know
But
who he reminded me a bunch of when I watched him play at Oregon State?
who is that?
Justin Hardy, if you remember him.
I do remember. I don't see it, but I mean, that doesn't mean that it's not there. It just means I don't see it.
You got Missouri linebacker Jalen Carley's, another depth piece who was a good player in the SEC, good downhill. I think that's a good pick. Do I think he's going to start? No. But there was a clear emphasis on get depth.
Oh, absolutely, and they did. Like we've said it several times that this was a depth draft. So,
and because I didn't watch these guys, but I do want to shout them out because I feel like it's wrong if we don't. Jalen Simpson from Auburn, a cornerback. Micah Abraham, cornerback out of Marshall, and John Lalu, defense tackle at Oklahoma. I didn't watch any of those. I don't know if you did.
Micah Abraham, I did. So, but once again, you're filling out your roster, and Laulu, or however you want to pronounce it, is just a big body. So,
yep. Well, now it's time to move on to the disappointment of last year, and I think that's very fair to say.
You mean my AFC pick for the Super Bowl?
I thought that was the Bengals. They were my pick for the Super Bowl. I think you had the Bengals last year.
I did. I had Jacksonville playing the Bengals and losing to the Bengals.
I had Jaguars, Lions in the Super Bowl. One team nearly made it. The other team didn't even make the playoffs. Jaguars. I think the biggest weakness for the Jags, and maybe people will disagree with me, I am not a Doug Peterson guy. I'm just not. I just don't think Doug Peterson's the guy. And maybe we can bring this all back to when we talk about the Chiefs and we talk about how Andy Reid does stuff and how his disciples will try and do it like Andy Reid, but they just can't. And mainly, his offensive disciples, to be specific.
Well, I mean, there's only one Andy Reid. The same thing was with Belichick and all of his people. The success that they'd have in New England versus when they tried to actually go implement Bill Belichick. Sadly, you can't do it.
They do bring in a new defensive coordinator. I believe he was the Falcons DC last year, correct?
Ryan Nielsen, yes.
I liked a lot what he did with the Falcons, to be honest.
They were a pretty good defense last year.
And you have a guy in who did they just draft recently? It was the first overall pick from Georgia. How did I blank on
Ebiketie.
No, not Ebiketie. That's Atlanta.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who are we talking about?
It was the first overall pick from Georgia. Trayvon Walker.
Trayvon Walker. I'm sorry.
They haven't got much at Trayvon Walker at his time in Jacksonville. I think you bring in Nielsen, who worked very well, got a lot of good pressures with the Falcons. I think he can come in and maybe try and get more from Trayvon Walker, because right now it's looking like a horrible pick compared to Aiden Hutchinson, who is fastly becoming one of the best defensive players in the NFL.
Well, he was drafted off of upside and off of physical ability, not off of what he has done on the field. Hutchinson was drafted off of what he's done on the field. So I would not blame the player there one way or the other. I would blame, coaches and front offices and things that think that just because somebody can run this fast and jump this high and lift this many times, that it can transfer onto the football field. Because sometimes, guess what? It just doesn't.
Can I tell you what that pick still reminds me of to this day? bulky chase than an Alden Smith. Highly athletic, can get to the quarterback. Just it unfortunately didn't work out with Alden Smith because of off the field issues, which we're all aware of, I'm pretty sure. And if you're not,
But the difference is if you could have reined in the off the field issues, his on the field
was so phenomenal.
It was crazy.
And because he was a highly athletic, phenomenal player. Is Trayvon Walker ever going to be that? No, and I don't think it was fair to put that pressure on him. He was not a first overall pick. When we entered the draft cycle, I believe, was he even a top 10 pick that year?
No, he was down in the 20s when they originally looked at it.
But we saw flash and flash and flash and flash. You know why he had so much flash and looked so good on paper? Because everyone on Georgia was so much better than everyone else on that defense that it was easy to show out because all he had to do was run. He didn't have to do much beat the offensive lineman. He was such a great athlete. And now you see transition to the NFL, the tools just aren't there. Maybe Ryan Nielsen can get it out of him. But even if they can't and he's just going to be a number 2 pass rusher, you have a pretty good number 1 in Josh Allen, who they just re-signed. They paid him a bunch of money, and he is the face of that defense now. I think that's very fair to say.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
The Jaguars, they're so weird, as in, I can see this team making the playoffs. I can see this team not. And it just comes down to, can the coaches put their players who I like in the right position to succeed? And I want to talk about, in my opinion, their biggest offseason move, their biggest addition. The Jags finally got, in my personal opinion, a number 1 wide receiver. Calvin Ridley was not that last year. I think Brian Thomas Jr. can be that one. And the more I went back and I rewatched his LSU film, the more I kept on kicking myself for thinking, why didn't I have him ranked higher than Malik Neighbors? That is my biggest mistake in this past draft cycle, and I believe that to my fullest. I think BTJ is about to pop his rookie year, and he's going to be one of Trevor's favorite targets.
I just think he's a more complete receiver than Neighbors. That's my personal opinion. And so the things that Neighbors does well, yeah, he probably does them a little bit better than Brian Thomas, but like so far as an overall player, I like where he's at, and I think he's going to do well.
And that's very fair. I'm higher on him because I love the spot. I love the marriage. I think him and Trevor will work great. To talk about the other Jaguars draft picks, Mason Smith. I liked him, and I thought the Steelers were going to draft him because he was very Stephon Tuitt-esque. Do I think he's going to be Stephon Tuitt? No, I don't put that pressure on anybody being a all-pro level player. I think that's unfair to say, especially for a day 2 pick. Jerry Jones was solid. Javon Foster, solid. Jordan Jefferson, solid. Deontay Prince, solid. Keelan Robinson, solid. Cam Little, solid. Miles Cole, solid. I really liked the first 2 picks, but after that, it kind of was just like, yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. Nothing that made me say, oh, yeah, it's awesome. Nothing that made me say, I really don't like this pick. I thought it was a solid draft after the first 2 picks.
So I do like Javon Foster, and I do like Jordan Jefferson.
Okay.
So, but you're right. I mean, other than that, it was kind of like So we'll see what happens. Now they're free agents. They brought in Dearness Johnson. He had a good year last year. Gabe Davis, I don't know what his role is going to be in the offense. They brought in Devin Duvernay. I'm wondering if they're thinking on Duvernay to be
return.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. And then they brought in Eric Armstead for the defensive line.
I nearly skipped over him. You are an Armstead fan. I remember you loved him his draft year.
Yep.
You hated watching him play for the 49ers.
Yep.
What do you think he brings to this Jaguars defense overall?
He allows everybody to be better. He is not going to go out and get 10 sacks from the interior defensive position. but he's going to occupy the double teams. He's going to work with the edge so that that edge can shine. He is just a great football player and teammate.
Yeah, and the Jaguars kind of need that. And as we just spent talking about Walker, he's a guy that can help work with Walker and help develop him, because I remember seeing videos of him. He works with the young players. He worked with them in San Francisco, and I'm assuming that's not going to stop in Jacksonville.
Probably not.
Overall, I do think the Jaguars made steps forward this offseason, but I do have question marks about their coaching. But, do you have anything to add?
No. I'm not sure if they added players at a couple of spots. It's gonna be interesting to see how their secondary works. I think losing Rashawn Jenkins was big. He's not that huge name, but he's that solid player that is always where he needs to be. And so on the back end, I think that's going to be interesting to see, what happens there. Offensively, I think they gained, and then like I said, I agree with you that I think Armstead he's going to help solidify the line. But does that mean that that those edges are going to be anything more than what they are? I'm not sure.
I mean, you got pretty good production at Josh Allen. It feels like a lot of the Jaguars' defense depends on how much does Walker improve. Now, it's time to move on to the surprise NFL last year, the defending division champions, the Houston Texans. And before we even talk about biggest weaknesses, offseason move, how shocked are you that the Texans were that good last year?
I would break the needle on shock value.
Yeah. It's not, and you love Stroud, but everything that needed to go right went right. And round of applause to D'Amico Ryans. How he didn't get Coach of the Year, I don't get. I know Stefanski did a good job, but that Texans team was left for dead before D'Amico got there. And I think now, get the pause out of the way, recap their season enough. We're all about moving forward here. And the biggest question mark I have for them, their O-line depth does not give me much hope.
No, definitely not. They've got good starting cast. They actually lost some of the depth, but yeah, it's not one of their strengths.
And hey, the Slowick and D'Amico, they come from the Kyle Shanahan tree of, hey, we may not have the best line, but we know how to coach and get stuff out of them, which it always befuddles me when San Francisco does it. They had a bunch of injuries last year in Houston. It befuddled me when they did it then. Maybe they just know how to coach around it. And if that's the case, good for them. Still don't like it. But I don't want to hamper too long because it is depth, and it's not like we can shout out names of what they can do to improve. Overall, you just got to draft and build that up. The biggest offseason move, though, in my opinion, their biggest strength, they surrounded Stroud. They brought in Diggs, Mixon. They lost Singletary. But is there a receiving group better than the Texans as a whole? There might be more star power at a top 2 position. But overall, who's got it deeper than Houston?
I'd say there are several teams that are just as deep as Houston. But considering where they were judged at the start of last year as opposed to where they are right now, I mean, it is night and day.
Nico Collins, breakout year, Brian Stephon Diggs, Noah Brown, who I believe they brought back. It's just, wow. And you also have Mechie from a couple years ago, draft pick. You got Tank Dell
Tank.
with the most misleading nickname ever.
Yes, that is true.
It's just this Texans team. 2 years ago, they were left for dead. Now it feels like, oh, they might be a Super Bowl contender. And does that feel right to say?
Well, I mean, yeah, because it's true. What I have said, I mean, last year, I think that we thought they were 3 years away. Um, and they completely proved us wrong. So, uh, yeah, they're a Super Bowl contender this year.
If you went back in time to say 2, 3 years ago and you told yourself, hey, the Texans will not have Deshaun Watson and they're going to be a Super Bowl contender, what would you tell yourself?
Um, I don't know because I mean, look at how quick things can change in the NFL. I
You,
mean,
you got to get the coach and quarterback right, and they did.
yep. Somebody on this pod said Stroud was the best quarterback in the draft last year.
Muted. Uh,
just I'm just saying.
so now we talked about them enough, and we can talk about other moves they did make because defensively they lost Grenard. They brought in Daniil Hunter.
That's a good ad.
That's terrifying. And I love Grenard, but I'm looking at this defense. I'm like, oh, they're better. This offense, oh, they're better. Oh, this team might legitimately have a chance to beat the Chiefs in January. Not many teams you can say that about. And now it's time to move over to their draft picks as a whole. Kamari Lassiter, I wasn't the biggest Kamari Lassiter fan. I don't know how you felt about him.
I mean, he's a good college player. I don't think that for me he didn't push the needle one way or the other. I just thought, oh yeah, he's pretty good.
Blake Fisher from Notre Dame, I liked a lot.
Yes, so did I.
Kalen Bullock from USC, I liked a good bit. I felt like he was not putting good positions. That whole USC defense with Alex Grinch was not good. He had players out of position, and even though he did have some yikes moments on the field, I felt like when he was in the right position, when he's put in the proper area to succeed, he succeeded. And when you go from maybe one of the worst defensive coaches I've seen in Alex Grinch to one of the best in coaching the game right now in D'Amico Ryans, I think that's a massive improvement.
Well, specifically defensive coach, and D'Amico was good at helping coach up the secondary. And look at the pieces that will be surrounding Bullock as well. So I think it was a good pickup. I had in mock drafts, I had Bullock a lot of times going to Seattle.
Jamal. Wait, no, I'm skipping one. Cade Stover, who I really did like a bunch at Ohio State. Good tight end, good big body catcher.
Yeah, it's going to be a good blocker. So.
Yeah, and you got Mixon too. That he's probably gonna be used a bunch in red zone packages if I had to guess. Jamal Hill from Oregon didn't blow me away, but wasn't bad. I'm indifferent on him, to be honest.
Well, they can't all be steals.
No, but this one is Jawar Jordan. I love Jawar Jordan. I think he's got good burst. I think he's good at picking his lanes. He's not afraid to get a little physical. I think Jawar Jordan can be a very good steal for them. And going to a back room that has Joe Mixon, Dameon Pierce already, it's not like he's going to get a bunch of playing time. But when he does, I do think he will succeed. Solomon Byrd from USC. I didn't watch him in general. I didn't put on his direct film. But I watched a bunch of USC defense. I'm not going to say my socks are blown off or anything. He was fine. Marcus Harris. The only time I really ever watched Auburn live last year was when they got dished the pants by New Mexico State. And I don't have anything positive to say about their defensive line from that game, to be honest. And Ladarius Henderson from Michigan. Big body, national championship pedigree. Can't say it's a bad pick because it's a 7th round pick. It's hey, he worked at the national champion. He worked under Harbaugh. He knows what an NFL coach is like. Take him. Let's see if there's something there. And maybe that's part of their way to rebuild their depth of the line we talked about is they're just going to take guys who have the pedigree, who have experienced NFL coaching, because let's be honest, it's probably what he was getting with Harbaugh. He's got the mentality already set in him. Maybe that's a guy we can work with and maybe get some more out of, or just depth overall.
I guess time will tell. Anything, that late in the draft, I just think that you're just hoping something hits, right? You're hoping that you get that guy that for whatever reason it was, the NFL is where it's at. Maybe it's coaching, right? Because let's face it, coaching is not just calling plays. Coaching is teaching. And that is one thing that I think that D'Amico does far better than a lot of other coaches in the league, is he's a teacher first. And so that's why his defenses are always as successful as they are, because he's teaching, and so it's going to be interesting to see just how some of these players transition.
Okay. Now we're done with recapping all these teams. We had some fun with it. Now it's time to get to rookies to watch, one on offense, one on defense. My rookie to watch on offense is Brian Thomas Jr. I have TJ as well, and I'm pretty sure our defensive rookie is going to be the same because mine's Latu. Latu. We already talked about these guys. We raved about them. I don't think there's more point into talking about them for another 5 to 10 minutes.
No. They're going to have good seasons.
They're going to have good seasons. They improve their team they're on. Offensive MVP, I think this was very easy. I didn't think much of it. I just put Stroud.
Hey, that's funny because I just put Stroud as well.
I guarantee we had the exact same defensive MVP. I put Jeffrey Simmons down. Why
did you copy me?
Even though I am lower on the Titans as a whole, I don't think there's a better defender position, like singular defender in the division that's better than Jeffrey Simmons.
I would agree 100%.
That being said, if you told me Danielle Hunter pops off or Will Anderson pops off and they just decimate quarterbacks, wouldn't shock me.
Well, I mean, but that's the thing, right? That's how it always is the sacks move the needle for MVP. So we'll just have to see what happens.
Now, to talk about division standings, I know we already have a disagreement on this because we talked about this previously. So I'm going to read mine off, and you read yours off. Good?
Perfect.
At fourth place, I have the Tennessee Titans.
I have the Colts.
Third, I have the Indianapolis Colts.
I have the Tennessee Titans.
Second, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I have the Jags.
First, I have the Houston Texans.
Ironically, I have the Houston Texans.
Our biggest disagreement is Colts-Titans, to be fair. We agree that the Texans are by far the best team in this division. They're loaded up.
Here's the thing, and this is how much you and I disagree on the Titans. I almost went Texans, Titans, Jags, Colts.
And Titans fans, I'm sorry. I have you picking probably at minimum top 10, probably top 5 this year.
Titans fans, just hop on board. We'll get the best. There's got to be somebody that makes the playoffs that was bad last year.
Yeah, the Steelers.
They made the playoffs last year.
They were still bad to watch. But that's gonna wrap us up. Up next, we're gonna be doing the NFC East. There's a lot to talk about. We're gonna break down the true definition of all in for some people who need that definition broken down. Overall, it's going to be fun. This is 2 of 8 division series we're doing. If you want to check it out, the NFC South one is uploaded. I'll put the link in the description, or I'll just maybe put it at the end of this video right here. Everyone have a great day and enjoy. We're on the week of football officially being back with the Hall of Fame game starting up Thursday.
Have a good one.